Academy Award winners Joel and Ethan Coen are here. Their films include Fargo, Raising Arizona, and The Big Lebowski. Their latest is an adaptation of Pulitzer Prize winner Cormac McCarthy's No Country for Old Men. Roger Ebert calls it a perfect film. Here is a look at the trailer.
I was sheriff of this county when I was 25 years old. Grandfather was a lawman, father too. The crime you see now, it's hard to even take its measure.
We're out a bunch of money and the other party is out his product.
Willin, what's in the satchel?
Full of money?
I'm looking for Llewellyn Moss.
Do you want to leave a message?
Yes.
What are you doing, baby?
Fixing to do something dumber than hell, but I'm going anyways.
You think Moss has got any notion of the sorts that are hunting him?
You can't stop what's coming. What's this guy supposed to be, the ultimate badass?
Compared to what? The bubonic plague?
These people will kill him, Carla Jean. They won't quit.
He won't neither.
I always seen this is what it'd come to. I previsioned it.
You know how this is gonna turn out, don't you? Nope. I think you do. What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss? Call it friendo.
Also joining me, the stars Javier Bardem and Josh Brolin. I'm pleased to have them here to talk about this film. Welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Is this the first adaptation?
Yes.
Everything else you've written. So if you're going to start with somebody,
Why not start with
Cormac.
Cormac? Yeah. Why not start with the best?
And so why did you choose this?
Well, we didn't actually choose it. It's sent to us by Scott Rudin in Galleys about a year before it was published, I guess. And we had read Cormac. We'd each read a number of his novels before, just for pleasure, not with the idea of thinking about them as movies. But this one seemed unlike, I think, his other novels.
In what
really.
way?
Well, at a certain level, it's much pulpier than his other novels. At least it is initially. You know, the first three quarters of the novel are sort of move along like a thriller. And then, you know, it takes a turn, which was just got us more interested.
Take me through the process of this, you know, in terms of how you felt about it and why you wanted to tell the story and what it offered you and working in Texas.
Oh, well, that was one of the attractions, actually. That was one of the big attractions. It's a regional story, as all of Cormac's stuff is, and we kind of, we knew the area West Texas, and that was just another reason to do it. But, you know, mostly it's what Joel said. It was just, it seemed like promising as material for a movie. It was just, you know, it's a chase action story, and, you know, something more than that, but that.
Tommy Lee was your first choice.
Yeah.
He's the first hire. Because?
Yeah. He's just kind of the obvious guy. There's the sheriff in the story is just, you know, by virtue of Tommy's age and the region, again, you know, he's very much of that place. Tommy's, you know, from San Saba, which is not quite West Texas, but close enough. You know, he's just...
Down by the border.
The San Saba isn't, actually. It's more Central Texas, but like I say, close enough. And, you know, he's just got the everything, you know, the authority, and he was just the obvious choice.
And then Javier was next?
Yeah.
Because he's mean enough? Because
Because he's mean enough. Yeah.
Look at him.
Look at him. Yeah. Did you say to them, I don't like violence?
Yeah.
I don't like to speak English much.
I don't speak English, and I don't drive, and I don't like violence.
I don't drive.
Yeah.
And they said, you're our guy.
Yeah, he did. He said, I hate guns and I don't drive. Javier was, after Tommy, Javier was the next person we approached. And
who does he play?
he plays a character in the, he plays the bad guy.
Yeah. But who is he?
Well, that's, you know, what's interesting about that character in the novel is that Cormac McCarthy keeps the reader really completely off balance in terms of who that character is. He describes him physically almost not at all. He gave him this name. Actually, it was one of the things that first thing I asked Cormac when I met him was what his name is Chigurh, Chigurh. And I said, what kind of name is that?
Right.
And he said it's a name that, I mean, what he was saying basically was he tried to find a name that was intentionally untraceable, sort of ethnically or in terms of nationality or any of the rest of it. The idea is that the character is in many ways a mystery in the book, and the sort of task in terms of casting the character was how do you sort of make that character dynamic and real and compelling, but preserve part of that mystery.
And then Josh. Oh, you made a tape for them.
I did. I was doing Grindhouse with Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, and I asked Robert, who I've been friends with for a long time, I said, you know, there's this Coen Brothers movie happening that I just found out about. I had read the book a long time ago, and then, you know, I couldn't leave because I was working, so I asked Robert, would he videotape me? And he said, why don't we just use the camera we have, which was $1 million Genesis
Most
camera.
expensive audition tape ever made.
Truly. The most brilliant-looking audition tape that Quentin directed and Robert lit and shot.
Yeah.
And then I sent it to them, and their response was, wow, who lit it? Well, what about the guy? And my agent's going, well, do you like him? Well, no, but
we like
DP. I'm looking for a new DP.
So what was wrong with his audition?
No, it was fine. It's just, it's harder to react to a tape. You know, it's good to meet actors.
Well, that's what he wanted all along. He was saying, no, you didn't?
No, it wasn't. I couldn't at that point because I was working. It wasn't until afterwards that they say no that I got the gumption to say, okay, I want to meet these guys. I want to tell them how I feel.
Well, you know, you have this reputation as sort of being very picky about, you know, that you've turned down more things and only done the things that you want to do because you...
I'd never seen a Coen Brothers movie, and I wanted to, and so I watched some of their movies. And
you had never seen them?
No, that's not true. That's not true. Yeah, I'm picky, but when it comes to masterful filmmakers, honestly, like these, you know, then you're a lot less picky.
And why are you picky, though? I mean,
with other films?
Yeah.
Well, I really wanted to do Dukes of Hazzard, but I thought maybe when I look back on it in the end that I might go, why?
I'm not sorry.
Why?
Yeah,
so this is a movie that I can look back on.
You couldn't explain that to your children, could you?
Exactly. That's my thought, too. I have a healthy fear of that, being on my deathbed and looking out, you know.
And they saying, Dad, did you actually make...
What'd your dad do for a living? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He was a plumber.
That's right.
Yeah. So when I, you know, this movie and American Gangster and stuff like that, I look back on it and I feel great. I worked with amazing people and collaborate with those amazing people. It's a lot easier to work with people like this. You know, there's a lot more ego on the set with other, I don't know.
Tell me about the nature of the collaboration.
Well, with these guys, it was fairly quiet. I mean, these guys don't, there's not a lot of, look at, they're sitting there smiling because they know.
Well,
you know, there's an unnerving presence in the beginning. Like, there's none of that, like, wow, you are so great. What a great scene. Let's go do the next one because we're so happy now.
So why did you finally decide on him? What did you need?
What do we need? That's an interesting question. We thought it'd be easy. We thought there'd be like 100 people who could play this part because it's kind of an everyman part, and it's I don't know. We kept telling each other, all we need is a good, clean boy. How come we can't find him?
Yes.
It's actually unbelievably difficult because a lot of it is nonverbal. A lot of it is just process. You're watching the character do his thing physically. You need somebody who's going to be compelling to watch. I can't say these things in front of Josh.
I know, because I've never heard this.
I was trying to help you out.
And I've actually gotten them drunk and then tried to get them out of here.
Say that.
Tell me the reality.
How was I?
And they just fell asleep on the boat.
The other thing was that, you know, we, as you said, we had already cast Tommy Lee Jones and Javier Bardem in the other two parts. It's very much a movie about three men, equal weight in the movie, each of the three. And so the bar had been set very high in terms of our own thinking and just in terms of what we knew we needed in that part. We didn't want, you know, the audience to think when we cut away from Tommy and from Javier, okay, well now we're going with the dull guy for a while. It was somebody who had to be able to hold their own in terms of that sort of, you know, compelling presence in the movie. And so lots and lots of people, but it wasn't really until Josh came in and he read some scenes for us in a room, which is a lot different than tape. And that told us what we needed to know. I mean, it's true that after you left the room, we knew we were going to cast it in the movie.
It's got it.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me what sets up the movie, what you do that sets up the movie.
Well, I mean, he's a guy who lives in West Texas, who's really a part of West Texas. He is West Texas. He's from San Saba County, which is where Tommy Lee's from, which was a whole pressure in itself. But he's hunting antelope. He's out in the middle of the desert, and he runs into a drug deal gone bad, a Mexican drug deal gone bad, finds a truckload of heroin, knows there's money close by, finds the money. And
couple of million.
2.4 million. And then decides to make a better life for himself and his wife. I do think that he's motivated by his extreme love for his wife. You know, he wants to make a better life for her, maybe buy a house. He's never had money. I'm sure generationally they've never had money. So the thought of being able to buy her a nice dress or something like that. So I think his intentions are pure. For sure.
And he thinks he'll never be caught, that nobody will ever find.
No, I don't think I think he thinks there's going to be obstacles, but for a guy who's been in Vietnam twice and gone through two tours, I think he feels resourceful enough to be able to pull it off. He doesn't think there's going to be some, you know, this mythological, you know, Chagor, you know, death incarnate.
He doesn't think someone like Javier is going to come after him.
I mean, come on, who would? You know, when he shows up. You know.
I mean, this is a
like Godzilla kind of
a character like this. Do you simply go to the text and say, you know, I get it, or do you go somewhere else?
Well, as Joel said before, it was not especially extremely well described physically on the book, so it was wide open to any kind of interpretation. And actually, the only description that I remember is the blue lapis color of the eyes, which is something that I don't have at all.
Exactly, that's true.
But we tried to find a place where the person, which is kind of embodiment of violence itself, is believable, and people can get related to him in somehow.
Boy, they got related to him, didn't they?
Well, that's the point. In the humor or in the clumsy way of doing things sometimes.
It is said about you guys, Coen Brothers film is all about structure and process, and that you do more, and I'm opening this up for all of you, you do more in terms of sort of literally laying out every scene, so that by the time you make the movie, you've done all the heavy lifting. Josh?
For sure. I mean, you have sides, you have what are called sides every day, and those are the pages that they're planning on doing, and then behind the sides are their drawings, or J Todd, wow. Anderson's drawings, their storyboard artists, so you know what shots they're going to do, and they stick pretty much to what that is. I mean, not that they're not willing to, you know, be spontaneous or improvise or ad-lib or, you know, all of that, but, you know, they've created a very strong foundation to always resort to, you know. And then wherever we go.
I think you ad-libbed one line in the movie.
I would like to think it was more than that. But yeah, there was one line that when I find the money, I look to the dead guy, which is absurd. And then I said, you know what, I think that we should have something here. Like he's deciding, okay, the day is going to change, or yes, I'll take the money, or I see where we're going here. So we tried different, what ends up in the movie is, And I can always hear...
That was your improvisation?
That was my improvisation. And I always know where Ethan is in the theater, because I always hear him go. I always hear him go. Right. But we tried different ones, I think. I think we tried and then we tried and we came up with
better.
Still my
it was a wise choice, wasn't it?
favorite speech in a movie.
Yeah, real life.
But tell me more about your philosophy of making movies that reflected in what we just talked about.
Well, it is kind of what Josh says. We have a plan because we're chicken. You know, we don't want to have to go on.
You don't trust your actor? What?
No, not the actors.
Yeah.
But just in terms of being our own ability to extemporize on the set, or the obligation of extemporizing on the set. We don't want that. We want to have a plan for how we're going to shoot the scene, whatever it is. So we walk in with a plan, which, as Josh says, is always kind of subject to change. But it's kind of a security blanket.
The mythology about Alfred Hitchcock. In fact, he was the biggest promoter of it.
The idea
was that idea that once I actually get on the set, the only thing that can happen is that something can go wrong. He's already made the movie in his head, and he also was sort of very, very prepared to the extent of having pre-thought the movie before he started production. We're not. I'm not even sure that's true of Alfred Hitchcock in reality. I don't think he could have made 50 movies without enjoying the process of being on the set and working with people. It's such an extremely social and collaborative process. And while it's true that we prepare maybe to an extent greater than a lot of other directors, whom that's just part of our process, it's also true that we like the process on the set of actually seeing what happens, being open to what happens when you go into a new space, when you're working with new people, be they actors or technical people. And we do have storyboards, but actually we don't look at them very much while we're shooting. Mm-hmm. And once they've been done, we almost never look at the storyboards. We have them in the back of our minds and we follow them to a certain extent, but that changes a lot as we go through the production.
And also, since they deal with the visual way before, they're able to focus on actors, and be able to listen.
That's a good point. I was going to say that.
It's true.
Yeah, in fact, it gives them a chance to be more creative.
Exactly.
If you've already laid out the other things, so you're not worried about that.
Or to be there for the actors when the actors are being more creative, and to be able to go, bring it down or tweak. They do a lot of tweaking. Mm-hmm. They don't do a lot of massive manipulation.
Got you. Roll tape. Here's a scene. Do you change the book other than compress it?
Well, it really is just compression in this case of the adaptation of this book. In other words, we didn't invent any new, we didn't digress, we didn't create new situations or go off on the...
And you never met Cormac before?
No, we met him when we were shooting. Yeah. But
that's because of Roland. Yes. Tell me about the conversation.
Because Josh was stalking him.
Because I was stalking him.
Exactly.
And he was the one guy that didn't get afraid, which I appreciated. I remember I did it to Eric Bogosian. He would run every time I'd see him. I called him and I said, hey, I have a friend who is good at getting phone numbers, a shady kind of character, and I got Cormac's number, and I called him, and I left a message. He didn't call me back. I left another one. Then I left a third, and I was bored or frustrated one day, and I said, listen, I don't know why you won't call me back. I don't want you to sign my book or anything. Just call me back. And like 3 days later, he had come back from doing Sunset Limited, one of his plays in Chicago, and he said, he was totally amicable and said, I'm sorry I didn't call you back, and I just got home, and what do you need? And I said, well, I'd love to, for you to come down to the set, or I guess. And so finally he brought one of his family members down to the set and really enjoyed himself, because I had heard he had been to, what was the other one? The other Cormac? All the Pretty Horses.
All the Pretty Horses.
Yeah, and the rumor was that he had spent all his time with the props man, just talking about guns. So we had a feeling that even if he did come down, that we wouldn't be able to spend any time with him. But he's a huge fan of Miller's Crossing. That was the first thing that he brought up. Yeah. And then the other thing that we talked about was his involvement in Santa Fe Institute. He's the only literary portion of, a bunch of physicists and scientists of that think tank.
Right.
So he's more proud of that than anything else. He doesn't want to talk about writing.
No. In fact, somebody, I think, told me they went to see him, and that's where they met. They met at the Santa Fe Institute. That's where he insisted on meeting. You want to meet me? We'll go there.
That's where you send his mail and everything.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah. Has he talked to you about the movies? Anybody? Have you talked to him since then? Have you become what?
They've talked to him a few times.
What does he say?
He saw the movie. We think he liked it. As Ethan said, he didn't yell at us. He didn't.
What did he say?
Yeah, you know, he seemed to like it. We were actually sitting in the movie in the theater screening room with him when he saw it, and he was way up front. But I heard him chuckle a couple of times, so I took it as I took that as the seal of approval. I don't know, maybe presumptuously, and you know.
I talked to him afterwards. He says, "A good movie there." And then I waited for more, and none came, and that was the end of the conversation.
And you felt good to have that.
But that's good. When you talk to these laconic West Texas guys, when they give you that much, it's huge. It's kind of like them.
Yeah. Violence in this movie. Or violence generally for you guys. Is this something that you think, I mean, is it in every movie?
Well, it's a very violent, I mean, one of the things we said to Scott Rudin, one of the first things we sort of discussed with him when he sent us the book was, you know, there's a lot of violence in the book, and it's very important, as there is in a lot of Cormac's novels, and it's very important to the story, and we couldn't conceive of sort of soft-pedaling that in the movie and really doing anything resembling the book. You know, it would have been nonsensical, and we wanted to make sure that Scott was on the same page with that. Of course he was. I mean, he wanted to make the book. He didn't want to make some sort of studio Hollywood version of you know, No Country for Old Men. But it's, you know, it's about a character confronting a very arbitrary, violent, brutal world, and you have to see that. You see it in the story as it's written, and you have to see it in the movie in order to understand in order to understand anything, I think, about what the characters are, what they're about and what they're confronting and what they're trying to make sense of.
Everybody talks about the dog chase into the river that's seen the movie. Every reviewer, everybody that I know. I mean, do you see it as having that sort of appeal?
We did add the dog to that scene, but we figured Cormac wouldn't mind because he likes his dogs.
And he did say he liked the dog after the movie. That was one of the cases of taking something in the novel, which was a very exciting chase scene in the novel.
Set it up for us.
Well, in the novel, after Josh's character finds the money, he actually goes back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, the place where he found the money later that night. The reasons why are interesting, and I won't go into them, but he goes back, and it's the biggest mistake. It's the mistake he makes that's sort of the catalyst that sets the rest of the plot in motion. He's then confronted by some of the perpetrators and chased, and it's a set piece in the novel, and we knew it was going to be sort of a set piece in the movie, that it was an opportunity for a very sort of exciting piece of cinema, you know. But in doing it, we amped it up sort of another level that's just, I think, sort of purely appropriate in movie terms. But it also was, it made sense to us to include this dog because so much of what Carmack's is, he's fascinated by animals and by dogs, and they play such a sort of huge part of so many of his stories that this seemed like an addition we were bringing to the movie, which was not sort of inappropriate to his sensibility.
Since then, actually, I hadn't read it then, but I read Cormac's first book, which is great and weird for a first book because it's so much Cormac. It's not like he was trying to figure out who he was. It was like all his other books. But in that
all
too,
his other books are trying to figure out who he is.
All his other books, he kind of knows who he is, and he knows what he's doing. But even in the first one has a really good dog. I thought, man, even
I want that dog. I want that dog in my movie.
So what happens? Josh.
What happens to the guy?
Yeah. No, what happens to the dog and what happens to the guy? Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, why is this scene so intriguing to everybody?
Well,
because there's fear.
No, because it's so visceral. You know, I mean, the whole thing is
visceral and
the fact that you can't. You know, it's not going to be an argument at the end of the chase It's not going to be. It's a showdown that there's no possible way you can cinematically predict. You know, and the fact that they're running along this river and there's every obstacle, but from a terrain point of view, and then you have this rabid, you know.
This was a mean dog.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't a movie dog. He wasn't. He was a trained, awful. I mean, he was a sweet. No, he wasn't sweet. He was a dog.
Right.
But he had the look. He had the Beelzebub look. He had the, you know, he had
could do it.
Chigurh.
Yeah.
He was the animal version of Chigurh.
My pet. Exactly. Your pet. Let's see. Let me see that again.
No, it's just like his thing that he does, you know.
I was taking a walk to my pet. I was thinking.
Anyway, there's the dog.
So the dog dives in.
The dog dives in, and I remember when the dog was diving in, they let the dog go, and the trainer was sitting there, and the dog's name was Scooby, and it was all, like, just reverberated in our heads, Scooby, 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 and it was ridiculous. And then you see the dog, and it's so contrasting the name to the name, and then
This
finally,
is no Scooby.
and then I jump in, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm tired, and we can only shoot from 4:30 in the morning until 5:30, and then at night between 7 and 8, or whenever the light was perfect for Roger Deakins. And then they let the dog go. I jumped in, and I had an injury anyway that I got before the collarbone broke. Yeah. So I'm jumping in and doing my best to swim along there. They let the dog go. The dog probably jumped, I don't know, 50 feet. He was supposed to, we figured he'd jump maybe 15, 17, and the dog just catapulted toward me. And I was like, get the dog, grab the dog. This is not fun.
This is not good.
This is no good.
This is not going to be a happy ending.
No, I don't want to act anymore. I don't want to be in another Coen Brothers film.
Exactly.
I'm not getting paid enough.
And I'm going to miss my arm. And I'm going to miss my arm, too.
Yeah, my arm, my life.
You mentioned something, or I think you said about sensibilities. Some are writing that you guys, in the way you approach film, share a kind of sensibility with Cormac McCarthy.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
All we know is the book appealed to us as,
As just a story?
Well, it's both. As a story, as all Cormac's books do, but also as something that you could make a movie out of.
Hell of a movie.
Yeah.
I read somewhere also, Javier, that this was a latter-day Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter, right.
Yeah. Do you think of him that way at all?
No, not really. No, I mean, there are great performances. There are people that are kind of psycho that I thought for a second to take a look at, but then I thought that it would be a mistake.
To look at somebody else's psycho.
Because then I will copy exactly the same thing like he did, and I will bring that to their movie.
Yeah.
Also, what Javier doesn't do, I mean, it's weirdly not a malevolent character, although he kind of scares the crap out of you. It's weird. I don't know what the line is that Javier walked, but it's not exactly an evil character. He's just very uneasy making.
Or is it something you like about him? I mean, some people say when you're playing a bad person, find some redeeming quality that the audiences will like. Is it that sort of cliche, or is it another cliche?
I don't think that was the intention.
You don't like him, but you recognize him at some level as being human. And
human.
Yeah, and that was again an interesting line. I think that Javier had to walk in his portrayal of the character. He's the one character in the book that actually departs from a certain sense of realism. He's both sort of real in the book and an idea, and that's a very, very difficult thing to do, I think, as an actor, is to sort of preserve that. It's the mystery and the fact that and the fact that you have to be human at the same time that you have to embody something else. You have to sort of embody this idea as the character's written.
And so also, as filmmakers, I think it's tough to cut that together, because if you have too many looks of this, or it can start to become almost silly, So you find a humanity within that, and he brings so much charisma to it. I think that's the great thing about this guy, about these bad guys, his bad guy, his Chigurh, is that there's a charisma that you can't help but like the guy, but you shouldn't. You want to follow him, which is, so there's 2 or 3 things going on at once that you don't get to see in film usually.
Take a look at this. This is you there. Here it is.
And to win everything, call it.
Javier, you once said every movie you do is important because it teaches you how to at least not do what you don't want to do.
Wow, did I say that?
It was in Interview magazine. So, yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know.
So if you have a bad experience in a movie, you know not to repeat that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you want to get surrounded by people that, of course, they do well their job, but most important that they are good people to gather with. And and collaborate with. And there are people out there that they don't understand that. So, lucky enough, these brothers, beyond the great filmmakers they are great people. So I don't think you can go. This is the top you can get.
It really is.
Yeah, it really
You
is.
think the same thing?
For sure.
You know?
Totally.
Why is that? I mean, it's obviously talent, it's obviously sensibility, it's obviously something.
But you were trying to make that connection between Cormac and
exactly.
and the brothers, and
Sensibilities.
that's no, it's just people doing their own thing. I don't think that they expect. I mean, they've said it. They don't expect their movies to be, fully accessible. There's no pandering going on. There's no pandering going on with Cormac. There's no pandering going on with the Coens, and they'd never say that. I mean, they would never. They don't talk about themselves at all.
I know, but that's why you.
But that's why I'm here to support them. I'm basically the Coens mascot.
In the movie. Oh, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
Joel, Ethan, Josh pops up and says, "Well, I'll tell you."
They won't. We need somebody to tell us what they're like.
No, but it's true, and there's a whole mystery that's come, that's been created around what the Coens are and all this kind of stuff because of the sensibility and the absurd. No, man, they're sweet guys.
Yeah, exactly.
A little strange, but they're sweet.
But there's a mystery, though.
There is a mystery that's been created because the movies are so authentic and unique and personal, and it's a different kind of filmmaking.
I thank you, Josh. Great to have you in the program.
Thanks
at
so
long
much.
last. Thank you.
you.
Javier, great to see you again. And for you, too, welcome back. Have we done how many movies? 4 or 5?
Yeah, at least.
At least.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you again. Very much.
Yeah, thank you.